Thanks, everybody. All right. Before we start this evening, I'd like to pay our respects to the peoples of the Kulin Nations on whose traditional estates we meet today, to their ancestors and to the children who we are educating into the future. I also acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present. Welcome everybody to our third STEMinar for 2018. I'm Jen Mansfield. 2019, sorry. We have a great lineup of speakers today talking about developing entrepreneurial skills in schools in a STEM context. And we have a great lineup of speakers today. We have Fiona Lewis, who's a program coordinator from The Generator. We have Michelle Mitchell and Alan Shaw and students from the Knox School. And we have Darren Irvine, who is a learning specialist in entrepreneurship at Templestowe College. So, before we get started, I would just like to note that we have a hashtag tonight if you would like to tweet or on other social media outlets, and it is hashtag Monash STEM. We also have launched our new Monash STEM website, which you can find at www.monash.edu/STEM-education. So I welcome you to have a look at those websites as well. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Fiona Lewis, our program coordinator from The Generator. Fiona manages the core programs of The Generator, Innovation Bootcamp, Validator and Accelerator. She's been part of the very start of the entrepreneurship at Monash through the Incubate program in 2015. Her role is to shape out an incredible experience for young entrepreneurs and startups coming through the Generator programs, as well as develop new programs for the Monash community. Welcome, Fiona.
Thank you. Oh, hello. I'm just gonna... Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. So as Jen said, my name's Fiona Lewis. I'm the program coordinator here at The Generator, which, if you don't know, is the central entrepreneurship hub at Monash that was established in 2016. So as Jen said, I look after the core programs that we run. We do lots of other things as well, which I'll touch on in a bit. But I started my career here at Monash. I'm a biomed graduate with honours, and then I decided to come back again and do a master's in business specifically for science and tech grads, to give me that commercialisation lens on my science degree. So I've been working here at Monash since 2014. After I finished up my master's, I came back not long after and started working with the research and research infrastructure office here, who look after the core facilities that house all the research infrastructure, such as your electron microscopes, e-research, immersive visualization facilities, all the really cool toys that researchers use on campus. So really learnt a lot, got to see a lot of really cool things, but it was really in the end of 2014, start of 2015, when Monash was investigating entrepreneurship and how we could better support students wanting to go down this pathway. And we essentially piloted a summer accelerator program. It was only for 5 teams. At that point, they each got $5,000. We mentored them over 3 months. And then they got to pitch at the end of it. And we used a model based from the University of Sydney, who helped us launch it really quickly to see if there was actually an appetite for this, for entrepreneurship at Monash. And there was. So we went on to then develop The Generator. So I've been, developing these programs since the very start. And am now the program coordinator. So looking after our key core programs that range from 2-day boot camps for PhD students to 5-week launch programs to help students, staff and alumni launch their ideas. And then to our 3-month accelerator program. So like the original one we launched back in 2015, this one's a really intensive program designed to get these startups moving quickly and to learn the skills that they'll need to make them successful in the future. So this is our team. We take the teams to Sydney as part of the program so they can learn about the ecosystem up there, meet with investors, connect with other entrepreneurs up there, because Sydney's a little bit more advanced than the Melbourne ecosystem. So it's all about making those connections. So that's us last year at Canva, one of Australia's most successful startups, or more recent startups. So why did the generator started? Well, in a time not so long ago, you went to school, you got good grades, which meant you could get into a good uni, which meant you could get more good grades, so you'd get a good job, and then you'd end up with a gold watch at the end of 40, 50 years service at the same company. However, things have changed, and now we're in a world where we're more connected and things are moving faster than ever. So there's just the flight paths, you can see how connected the world is just from the amount of travel that planes are going. And now technology as well has changed the world of work. So you can see the adoption of technology even in the last 20 years since text messages first arrived back about 95, 96. And it's a bit of a slow curve to when, and they start to steady out about 2015. So it's taken a good 20 years to sort of get adoption. However, WhatsApp was launched less than 10 years ago, and they've already surpassed the adoption that SMS has had. So technology is transforming and is changing the workforce. So now, instead of getting that gold watch, people are now having more than, on average 5 careers and 17 different jobs during their lifetime. So they're having to deal with a whole lot of different things and develop a different range of skill sets from before. And also the types of companies that they're working for are changing. So again, 10 years ago, the types of the biggest companies in the world were around resources. You can see Exxon, Shell, a few telecommunications. But now in 2018, the biggest companies are largely tech companies. So the types of the businesses that are out there are changing too. So as I said, the generator was established in 2016, seeing that there was this change that's happening, that we are having to equip our graduates with a different set of skill sets, and that developing entrepreneurial skills can help them adapt and develop these skills to help with this changing work landscape. So it was also developed to create this entrepreneurial culture at Monash. To get people having a go, launching ideas. Monash has a pretty good history in terms of developing companies and innovations. We developed IVF, so there's, we've got a great history, and there's lots of things happening as well. But it was really about getting that student body and getting staff and alumni to be part of this change as well. It was to help startups launch. So more and more we saw that students and graduates were wanting to start their own companies rather than go and work for somebody else. So it was a place for them to come and for us to help them through that process. And finally, to contribute to that Australian startup ecosystem. So the US obviously has a long history of churning out those tech companies. And Australia's been a bit slower to the scene. But more and more over the last 10 years, we've seen that there is this entrepreneurial culture, and we're starting to see some what they call unicorns. So the amazing tech companies that have got billions of dollars, in their valuations, such as Atlassian and Canva, we visited last year. So that was the real reason why the generator started, and over the course of the last 4 years, can't count. We've been trialling different things, working with our customers, so students, staff, alumni, around what they want and what they need, and adjusting. So we're a bit like a startup ourselves. We're trying to find that product market fit and making sure that we're having really happy customers. And so we now have a whole range of events and programs that we run, and we support in different ways. So we really start off with activating our community, and that's just primarily through awareness and communication. So just telling people out there that we exist, we're here to help, but also around what is entrepreneurship, what are entrepreneurial skills, what are startups. And so this is done through videos and social media campaigns, really broad. Then starts to go a little deeper. So I should have said, so we've generated a mailing list. We've got more than 6,000 active people on it. They're engaging with us, that are following us on social media. And we get in front of a lot of people every year as well. So O Week is, we stand out there, and every new student that comes through that we try and engage and tell them that this is a viable option. It's then about engaging them. So it's that next step, and this is where we start to introduce the entrepreneurial experiences through events, through workshops. So we run a how-to series. So it's a simple lunchtime session where we put on a different topic, whether it's how to come up with a good startup idea, how to raise money, the list goes on. We've got an event on tonight, which is all about failure. So we've got a wonderful panel of successful or unsuccessful founders who are sharing their stories on what went right, what went wrong, and what they learnt from it. And so we sold out that event. So there's great engagement from, an interest to learn from these people and what's happened with them. We also support hackathons. We don't run them anymore because there's so many going on. So we support them in other ways. So if student clubs want to run their own hackathon, we'll help them through the process. There's also more happening with the student clubs, so we support them, and on it goes. It starts to get a bit harder. So this is when it's all about launching. So we have we have programs that help support when students come to us, or staff or alumni, and they want to actually launch an idea. They want to take it that next step. So that's where our validator program comes in. So we run that a few times a year, and it's all about getting them to actually take that leap and have a go, because probably the most often asked question of us is how do I actually do it? I've got this idea, but what do I do next? So we run this validator. Actually, it's a soft spot for them to have a go, and more often than not, to fail at their first try. But for us to be there to hold their hand and keep them going, to help them through that next point and be like, all right, what did you learn? What can we do next? And finally, the scale part. So this is where our accelerator program comes in, and we've got ideas that are a little bit more formed. We've got teams that are really committed to solving their problems, and we work with them intensively over 3 months. And these teams come out. Sometimes they raise more money to then get to the next stage. A lot of the time they're coming out with sustainable business models. So they're actually earning enough money to support themselves so that they can retain the control of their business and continue to grow it. So those are a brief snapshot of what we do and the types of programs we run. And it's really around, the more we get out the end of that, in terms of the successful story or the stories that come out of the scale part and the launching part, we then share with our community. So it's a bit of a feedback loop. So, and this is ever changing. We're only 4 years in. We're still working out what works, what doesn't. But we're starting to see the successes and how we're impacting the founders and startups and the people that come through our programs. So there's a lot of debate around, there's a lot of definitions around what a startup is, but I quite like Eric Ries's definition. And Eric Ries, he's the author of The Lean Startup, which is a popular method around launching quickly, failing fast, rather than the traditional way of launching a business where you'd write a long business plan and take it to the bank and get a loan. It's all about getting out there, talking to your potential customers and users and learning from them really quickly. So his definition is a startup is a human institution designed to deliver a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. And it's the conditions of extreme uncertainty that really resonates, because they're going into, when you're launching something new, you've got no idea whether it's going to work or not. You've just got to take that leap and have a go at it. And that's where we find a lot of founders that come to us with ideas. That's probably the hardest part, is actually just having a go and putting it out there and putting themselves out there with the chance that it's probably going to fail. And so there's been a lot of lessons that we've learned over the last 4 years around the qualities that make a successful founder and the skills that are needed to make, to be successful. So I'm going to just share a few of those that we've learned over the last 4 years. And the first up is ambition. So in 2017, 4 PhD students from Monash University in the engineering faculty were approached by an industry partner with a challenge to create a 3D printed jet engine. And they're all aerospace engineers, but had never done anything like that before. But they came together as a team because they're really passionate about space. And they gave it a go. And they were able to create this 3D printed rocket engine that works. And so they came to us last year and were like, we've done this project, but we don't want to leave it just there. We want to make this something. We want to change the world. And so they decided to create a startup called Next Aero. And these guys came through our accelerator program last year, really not knowing whether, this is something they could even do. The space industry is pretty new in Australia. There isn't a lot of money. There isn't a lot of support. This whole supply chain doesn't exist yet. But they wanted to give it a go. They have that passion and that drive and that ambition, the true definition of ambition, just to give it a go. It's most likely going to fail. The likelihood that they're going to be able to create this 3D printed rocket engine company is pretty low. But their passion and their drive and their ambition is what's going to make them successful, if it happens. And if not in this startup, in the next one they go and have a go at, or the following one. But that's what's going to keep them going. The second quality is around navigating complexity. And we see this with every startup. But I wanted to highlight, this is a team, Sam and Cindy from Ally Assist. They came through our accelerator program last year with a startup that connects therapy students, so occupational therapy, physiotherapy students, with people with disabilities. So they'd spent a few months, Sam's a medical doctor, Cindy was a physiotherapy student. So they spent a bit of time. Sam built he can code, so he'd built this app that worked, but they hadn't spoken to their market. So when the time came, they launched this app. They had a few customers that really were through word of mouth, but it wasn't growing. And so they kept chugging along every week, try and get more people on board. It just wasn't happening. And they weren't getting what we call product market fit, where it just, the market loves your customers love your product, and it's just, your growth explodes. And so they were really stalling. So at that point, they were like, I think we should just stop this. It's not going anywhere. It obviously isn't going to work. So they emailed all their existing customers, the few of them that they had. And they had one come back to them and beg them not to shut down, because they had this client had a child with autism, and they said that the connection that this therapy student had with their child had changed their child's life. It wasn't a doctor interacting with them. It was somebody that was closer to their age that had a real relationship with them. And so they used that. They used that one person to be like, right, there is a market here, let's learn from them. So even though they'd faced all these other challenges in terms of the market wasn't adopting it, they focused on that. They were able to then focus on the autism, on families with children with autism, and that's when they started to grow. And so now they're able to expand into other spaces, but they were really able, by interacting with their customers and following that, they were able to navigate those challenges and work out a solution. Sorry. Sorry, lost my train. The next, that brings me to empathy. So I'm going to continue on with Ally Assist, Sam and Cindy from before. If they hadn't really empathised with their customers and been able to, understand their needs and the problems that they were facing, they wouldn't have been able to work out a solution. So really important to grow that skill of being empathetic. And that was also applicable for another team that came through last year, a company called Monash. Dev, who's in the red, he was an international student, and his co-founder was she was a domestic student in Melbourne. But together they had this real passion for sharing information. They built up this community for international students around information for students when they were arriving in Melbourne. Dev had faced this problem when he came to Monash to study. He arrived and he didn't know how to get a job. He didn't understand, how transport worked. And through having that problem himself, he then created this solution of developing up these videos that went through how to actually get a job. And so he built empathy with this community, and so they were able to grow it to have a huge number of YouTube views, and then start this business that could then help support more international students through the process of coming to live in Australia. There's also, do you have a glass of water? Sorry. So entrepreneurship really forces you to interact with others. Thank you. Another view for him. So entrepreneurship really makes you interact with other people. So building, being able to be empathetic, building those tools really helps those teams move along. And especially when it comes to their own relationships in their team. So the relationships that they have with their co-founders or their other team members that are building this, being able to be empathetic and going through that process is really important. And then building resilience. So as we've met, Eric Rees, it's starting our startups. It's unknown, in terms of whether it's going to work or not. So more often than not, startups are going to fail. So being able to, whether for a variety of reasons, whether it's they build a product that the market doesn't want, they aren't able to build a product, you have co-founder issues, the list goes on in terms of the things that could potentially go wrong and probably will go wrong. But being able to overcome those challenges and come back when things start to go wrong is really important. And we see that with teams that apply to our programs 1 year and don't get in, but go on and they use that to go on and build a much better product and then get into the programs the following year. Or like with these, the app behind me, the founders of this, they came to us with a dress sharing app. They're two brothers that have never bought, sold or worn a dress in their lives, but wanted to start this dress sharing app. It failed. They couldn't get any traction with it. Surprise, surprise, not knowing their market at all. And so through the program, they had to start again. And so they did. They came up with a new idea around hypnosis for behaviour change. And they were able to build this app and this startup a whole lot faster than they had for the previous one. So as before, they'd spent 6 months building the app. They didn't understand their customers at all. They didn't understand the problem at all. But they came back and they built the next app in 6 weeks. So they drastically reduced their time to actually build something, and they'd learnt from their mistakes of the past. And from that as well, they went and they spoke to their customers from day one. They were able to really understand their market. So from the mistakes that they'd made in the past and from their failure, they were able to build that resilience and come back with an even better product the next time. So a really key skill that we see in founders. And finally, focus. It's really hard to do one thing well, let alone lots of things. So focus is one of the things that we get our founders we instill in them. I was going to say to focus on, but so like the analogy, it's hard to make a chocolate cake. Even when you've got a recipe and all the ingredients, you follow it. You can still end up, if you take your eyes off of it, it can still end up overcooked at the end if in the last 5 minutes. Imagine trying to make a chocolate cake whilst also making a lasagna, whilst a salad and a garlic bread. You end up, none of those things working out because you've just got too many things going on. So if you just focused on one thing and doing one thing at a time, that would come out better than the sum of everything else. So we get our teams to focus. For example, Danny, she has a rainwear company called Merry People. And at the time when she came into the program, she'd been running for about 3 years, but was trying to do too much. She was trying to do gumboots and rain hats and rain jackets, and she was trying to sell online and at farmers markets and wholesale, and just trying to do it all herself. And so it was going okay. She had a reasonable business, but she couldn't take a salary. She wasn't earning a huge amount of money, and it just wasn't growing. So we got her to focus. We told her, just focus on the gumboots for now. You can do the others later, but just do this first. We also told her, you need to where do you want to be selling? Where's your market? And it was in e-commerce. And so we got her to focus just on that. And by the end of the program, she was doing more in revenue than she'd done in the previous 3 years. So she'd grown a huge amount in a really short period of time. And she continues to grow to this day just by focusing. And now that she's done that, she can go on and expand and do other things. But it's the key thing is getting our startups to think, what can they do, the 20% that gets them the 80% result. So it's really around these transferable skills qualities that we've seen that make these entrepreneurs successful. So ambition, navigating complexity, empathy, resilience, and focus. But they can't be taught. They need to be experienced. And so that's where programs like ours help to develop these skills. And through our events as well. So it's really about going through the pain and learning that way to be able to gain these. So as I said, 5 key points from today. Entrepreneurship needs to be experienced. Can't just be taught. They actually need to go through the process of it, of learning. I've totally forgotten my key points. So, great. Transferable skills. It's about building up these, 5 key qualities. That's what we've seen in the last 4 years. I'm sure there's more, but these are the 5 ones that really resonate. No one's born an entrepreneur. It's through these experiences that they're made, and everyone has that potential. But their skills, you don't need to be an entrepreneur for these skills and these qualities to be useful. They're going to be applicable whether you go and work for somebody else, you go and do research, but building up these skills through entrepreneurial experiences, we think it's really important for this changing workforce. So thank you. If that's my contact details, if anyone has any questions.
We'll have questions at
and
the
questions
end, but
later.
if you'd like to
Right.
thank Fiona for her presentation. Thank you very much, Fiona. Thank you very much. Fantastic to get a feel for what the generator here at Monash can offer, and those skill sets, which I think we're going to see a little bit more of throughout some of the other presentations today as well. So without further ado, I'd like to move on to how is entrepreneurship now being implemented in schools? So what does it look like in the school-based context? So it's my great pleasure to welcome Michelle Mitchell. We're going to show a video first, which will give us a bit of a tuning in exercise, and then we'll introduce the speakers.
Yeah, it was sort of that light bulb moment. I know it's a cliche, but it really was a light bulb moment. Had no ideas, and then this came to us, and then we just ran with it.
Last year I introduced an entrepreneurship program in the school. I really wanted to see students develop some critical thinking, creativity. I want them to collaborate, and I did a lot of research on the internet to try and find competitions for students to enter into. And one of them was the Conrad Challenge.
So we came up with the idea of an FPOS machine with a fingerprint scanner attached to it.
Basically, we're combining two technologies, credit card and biometric fingerprint, and we merged them together to make a more secure payment method.
Credit card fraud is everywhere around the world, so we figured we really have a niche market that we can target.
So then we did some research into whether this was something that had been done before, and found out that it wasn't.
Big businesses like Kmart, Commonwealth Bank and the Australian Payments Network were all very positive towards the idea.
During the challenge they had to write a business plan, they had to do a video pitch, and they had to speak on stage.
We failed continuously over and over again. There was different problems that came up and we had to find solutions to it and overcome it. If you fail, it's not the end of the world. You learn from your mistakes. When they announced that we won, not gonna lie, I laughed because none of us were expecting it, and we all sat there in shock for a minute. It meant that we were invited to the US to compete in the International Conrad Spirit of Innovation Challenge. Standing on stage was the most terrifying thing we had to do.
When we won, it was sort of a bit of, we all looked at each other and went, wow, we've actually done this.
I was shaking so much. I couldn't believe it. None of us actually expected to win. I think I've grown as a teacher. I see myself as a support person, as somebody who works with the students rather than telling them everything that they need to know. It can be really tough to get an entrepreneurship program up and running if you don't realise the time commitment involved and the resourcing that's required behind it. I don't think I've seen this kind of difference in students before, but I'm hoping to really see it again.
It's really opened the doors to my future about what courses I choose, especially at university. And I also think that it means that now I have the confidence to be able to say, okay, I can go out and start my own business if I choose to. I think it's a very exciting prospect to have that opportunity available to you.
If I walk into a shop and see that the FPOS machine with the fingerprint on it that I helped create is on there, I'll probably take a minute just to be proud and then probably point it out, okay, I helped make that.
Fantastic. So I will leave the team from Knox to speak about their experience. I'd like to welcome Michelle Mitchell, who is the Manager of Strategic Implementation, and I would like to welcome Tori Bhavesha Mitchell up as well, if you'd like to come out the front, and Alan Shaw, who's the Principal. So I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. One of the biggest things that I learnt throughout this Conrad competition, apart from the time commitment that we spoke about in the video, was the fact that this was something that was earned by the students. It's very different to going on a school camp and being handed some money and, given the details of whatever you're doing. Every step of the way, these students really had to fight for their position in this challenge. And when they were faced with some obstacles, they had to nut out a solution on their own. And so when we were invited to the Brisbane finals in October last year. It was a real great sense of achievement. And then when we won those finals and got a place at the World Finals, we were really overwhelmed. But, they had done this on their own, and I was just a support person. And so it's a really good example of resilience. It's a really good example of achievement, and that success built the success that kept them going and drove them forward. There is a workload involved in this, and I'm very fortunate in my school to have a little bit of a time allowance in my weekly timetable to work with these students. I do have to give up my lunch times. To do something like this means that I don't have lunch at a normal time. I usually have it around everyone else's lunches, because lunchtime or recess or after school are the times that I can get access to these students. They're otherwise in class. So that can be quite a challenge at times. So that is something that if you're going to put an entrepreneurship program into the school and it's not embedded in the actual curriculum, and we do have some of these classes in our curriculum at Year 9 and 10 as well, if you're going to work at higher levels, you do have to acknowledge that it's going to be some of your own time, and you need to be able to manage that as a teacher. Outside of work hours, because we were so successful in the Conrad Challenge last year, the media caught on fairly quickly, and we were doing radio interviews and television interviews. We were on Channel 9, we were on ABC, we were on SBS, we did radio. I sat in my pyjamas one morning at the kitchen table at 6 a.m. doing a radio interview. Thank God it wasn't TV. So we had those challenges as well to face, and the students were interviewed. We had to give up time on our school holidays to go into Melbourne and film for SBS and Channel 9. But it was a really wonderful experience, and it was an awesome side effect of being in this challenge that has been very positive, and it looks fantastic on their CV. The social media that we've also been involved in promoting this challenge adds to their experiences and builds character and development in them as well as me. They've made connections with students interstate, particularly in Queensland, where the Conrad Challenge has a major focus at the moment, because it was launched from there at a school up in Queensland. And so they've made the connections to students up there that they keep into contact with. They're students of the same age that are going through the same issues, that are applying for universities around this country and possibly overseas. So it just extends those friendships and the circles that these students can now work in. And likewise, having now been to America with them, they have contacts from around the world. There was 7 or 8 nations represented in America in this challenge, and so they met people from Thailand and from Japan and from European countries. We had African countries there. They've got a lot of contacts in the USA that they all still talk to weekly about what's happening and what they're doing, so that network has broadened for these students and for us as teachers as well, because we've met up with the teachers and other admin people in schools when we were in America too. The students in this competition received a lot of feedback. So some of the things that they had to face was international judging. So their business plans went international. We had a judge look at it from NASA before we even got to the Australian finals. We had a judge look at it from the Middle East and give feedback. And it was really good to get those perspectives, because what we thought might have worked in Australia may not have worked internationally with the FPOS machine. Things around fingerprinting technology and putting your PIN number in is different in different countries. So to get that sort of information coming back was really useful. And the students then had to sort of sit back and take that information in and take that feedback that wasn't always positive and work around those challenges to move forward into the next phase. So that was really great as well. Just in general terms of setting up entrepreneurship programs, I have already mentioned the time, and I cannot reinforce that more than anything else. If you don't get some sort of time commitment or support from management to allow you the time to do it, it can fail really quickly, because it does take a lot of time. And for example, not only do I have these sorts of competitions like the Conrad competition, which is quite high level in the school and working with technology at quite an expert level really when you're developing an FPOS machine or an alternative to it. We also run things like student barbecues, and I have a group of girls that do a burger stall every single week for staff. And I have staff say, oh, it must be really nice to cook a burger every Friday, cook a burger every Tuesday. A lot of other staff that aren't involved in entrepreneurship programs don't realise the commitment that goes into developing those programs and keep them running week to week, including all the advertising that you have to get the students to do. All the contact points and the promotion that the students have to do. My 14-year-old girls that run the burgers buy all their own food themselves. They store that food, they manage the food, they take in the orders, they deliver those orders to staff on yard duty, for example. They do it on their own. I do stand there just as an adult because they're cooking and, there's some occupational health and safety around that. But there's a lot of that work and time that goes in. And as teachers in a school, you need to be able to manage that time along with your normal teaching load. So when other staff members do say to you, it must be nice to eat a burger for free every Tuesday, well, actually, it's probably a lot more than $7 or $8 worth of work that goes into developing that each week. So it's just something to keep in mind. A lot of people have also said to me, how do you do all this? You must have a huge budget. Well, no, I don't. I have a really small budget, because part of my entrepreneurial thinking with the students is for them to raise their own capital, because that's what they're going to do in the real world. And so when a student comes to me and says, I want to develop an FPOS machine, I'll say, okay, well, where are you going to get the money from? I'm not going to give it to you. That's not going to happen in the real world. So at the moment, I also have another group that are hoping to work at a national level if they can get through to the finals. And they're currently looking at fundraising activities, so we might have some Krispy Kreme fundraisers later this year. But I'm not going to give them that money in order to go and do their activity. They have to work for it. So you don't need a massive budget at all to do these sorts of programs in schools. And part of entrepreneurial thinking is to develop your own capital. So that's what the students need to do. It's really great if you could have sort of a resource area in the school as well to store things. It's something that I'm still trying to manage. At the start of, I've only sort of 18 months into my program, but my desk area is becoming quite full of equipment because I don't have anywhere else to store it. So I am looking and writing proposals to try and have some entrepreneurial sections of the school. I have a desk with toasters and toys and all sorts of things. I had a popcorn machine just delivered last week that's sitting in a corner for a group of grade 5, 6 students that are going to start a popcorn business. So, longer term, you need to start thinking about where can I store all this stuff safely, and where can students get access to that when they need it at lunchtimes as well. One of the issues in schools is working with students who are younger than 15, and if you are going to be a profit-based business, what do you do with that profit when they're under 15? And if you are going to be a profit-based entrepreneurial business in a school, are you going to donate that to charity or do they get to keep it? And I actually don't know the answers to that, and I have asked around every conference that I go to based on entrepreneurship in a school or anything that I go to where I might see someone who might know something about the taxation system, and I don't think the government's caught on to this yet, but do we charge GST if it's going to be profit-based? What happens to the profits if the students take some of it home? Is it a wage? What's the implications of a 14-year-old then raising profit in a school, in an entrepreneurial setting, if they get to take that home? So I don't know the answers, and I'd love to have feedback from this seminar if someone does know those answers. And last year I was at a seminar and there was a teacher proudly saying that some of her students had raised over $2,000 and they got to keep this money. And said, that's great, what were the tax implications? And she hadn't thought of it. So I think this is an area for schools to be really careful in, because we don't know what the government's going to be doing down the track in terms of profit raising in entrepreneurial activities. Nobody's really thought about it, I don't think. In most settings, it's probably only a couple of $100 at the most if students are raising funds. Okay, so just something to think about. Don't know the answer, but just raising that as an issue. For example, in our school, what we do is everything that's raised in terms of profit, half of it must go to charity, and we have some set charities. The other half students are entitled to keep. If it's more than $20, we actually give them vouchers of their choice. And that's a fun part of my job. I get to go shopping for vouchers. So they'll choose things like JB Hi-Fi or EB Games is really popular amongst a lot of my boys. And that's one way I think that we can get around those taxation issues that I am worried about. At school, we don't just do the Conrad Challenge. We do have a barbecue group that does the burger barbecues. We have a STEM-based challenge that is video gaming. I've forgotten to flick these slides. Oh, it's the wrong way. So they're my burger girls that cook burgers for the staff each week, gourmet burgers, and they're beautiful burgers. They're so filling, and they charge a fair price. So they do make a profit, and half of that will go to charity. The three boys in the middle are just completed a STEM-based challenge with technology. They've built a video game for PAX, if any of you know PAX, the Penny Arcade Expo in Melbourne in October. So they've entered that challenge, which is a student-based challenge. It was not entrepreneurial at all. The PAX challenge is just build a video game. So what we did was we turned it into an entrepreneurial one. We asked them to design on paper 3 different types of games, take it into assembly, present it at assembly, get student feedback. So they had to do a pitch, they had to receive feedback, and whichever one was the most popular design is the one that they actually had to develop for the PAX competition. Then they had to go and seek feedback from people in assembly a few months later once they'd developed the game. So the development of the game is what PAX really wants in their competition, but we added those entrepreneurial skills around it to ensure that they're actually getting a touch of entrepreneurial education at the same time. Again, those boys have done it all at lunch times, so that's Wednesday lunch. The other thing I do is I'm not an expert in programming. I'm not an expert in FPOS machines. I'm not an expert in design. I'm none of those, but I tap into other people in the school and in the community. And so I did go and get the IT teacher, and I said to him, would you like to help the boys with this competition? Because I can't. But I'll do all the admin behind the scenes, and I'll make sure they're all registered. I'll make sure that they're keeping up to date with everything. And the IT teacher works with them weekly. So, you're sharing that job in the school because you can't do it all yourself. And then the larger group on the right-hand side, that's actually one of our classes in Year 9. We have an elective called Money Creation, and the kids flock to that. They love it. But what it really is it's a semester-long entrepreneurial workshop, I guess, where they've got to design, run, earn a profit, and then donate that profit to charity. And the students at the end of that semester unit, they get to go to Kmart with me and spend all their money. And that's the haul of toys they bought a few months ago that's going to be going off to the Salvation Army Christmas Giving Tree Appeal, which is why my desk is so full all the time, because I have things like that sitting around it, waiting for the Christmas Tree Appeal to be opened up later in the year. There's a lot of opportunities with social media to promote entrepreneurship in schools, and I know I drive the marketing department mad at my school because I'm forever sending photos off to marketing. Here's one for Facebook, here's one for Twitter. But what you'll find too is once you start putting things out there on social media, the community takes notice and the community starts to offer you a lot of information. And you'll find that parents will come forward that have particular skills offering pro bono work. You'll have community members, local businesses coming forward. There's a downside to that though, because it does become too much sometimes. And I know that there's been situations where I just haven't been able to reply to the 25 emails that have come in the last hour, or, there's a parent desperate to help out, but I can't work out how to fit them into a program anymore or any better than what they can offer. So sometimes you really do have to say no, and that's a real skill as a teacher to be able to say no. I think teachers give lots of themselves, and you really do need to turn around and go, I've got enough people at the moment helping me, thank you very much. Do you mind being in a database? I may need you in 12 months' time. And same with competitions and things. We're involved in a lot of different competitions at school, but there are 4 now that I stick to because it was getting too much. And I was getting emails and messages and LinkedIn connection requests and all sorts of things daily, and it was getting too much. So we do the Conrad competition. We do the video game competition through PAX. Okay, there's a Plan Your Own Business competition through Education Australia, which is very theory orientated. And I'm trying to think of the fourth one, the $20 Boss program. I should know that one. If any of you have heard of the $20 Boss program, it's fantastic. It's run by the Foundation for Young Australians. You can Google it. And I've got it on one of my final slides as well. But all these programs offer you content, so you don't have to write a lot of content. You see, our governments haven't caught up on this yet, so it's not in the national curriculum yet in a big way. It's there, a small dot point within humanities, within commerce, within economics, within commerce, and there's a dot point, okay, for each year level. But it's not hugely written into our national curriculum, nor is it in our state curriculum. The national government is looking at putting together a proper entrepreneurial curriculum that will be sequenced, but our state governments haven't caught on yet. So depending on what schools you're involved in as to what you might want to teach down the track in entrepreneurial studies. But within the $20 Boss Foundation program, there's a 10-week course all written for you, and it's online, and students love it because it's self-paced and it's very socially orientated, so that underpins their course. The Plan Your Own Business competition through the Business Educators Australia is a very profit-driven course, and so you can use their material if you want to go down that pathway. The Conrad competition's based on design thinking, so you can go down that design thinking pathway and creation of business plans and reports. And so there's lots of resourcing out there. One last thing I want to just talk about before I hand you over to some of the student experiences that they'll talk to you about is funding. I haven't touched on this yet, but there's a lot of government funding out there for these programs. They haven't written the curriculum, but there's lots of government funding. So if you tap into particularly the Federal Department of Innovation, Industry and Science, I think that's the correct three in some order, Innovation, Industry and Science, they have tons of grants out there that you can access if you're successful. It takes a bit of time to write a grant application, but particularly if you're in a state school, there is a lot more available for you in terms of grants to get your kids up to Brisbane, or to get someone in to talk, or to promote entrepreneurship in schools. If you're in the private sector, it's a little harder to access those grants. They're still there, but there's not as many available. But, you know, last year when we were going to Brisbane and overseas, one of the things I did want to do is see if we could access some of those grants, and you can Google it. It's all there. All right, it doesn't take a lot, but it does take a little bit to put the application together. I do want to pass you over now to the students who are going to talk to you about their experiences in the Conrad Challenge. Oh, do you want me to flip this over?
So I'm Mitchell. I'd like to thank everyone for letting me come out here tonight and speak to you about my experiences taking part of the Conrad Challenge and what benefits I think it brought being a participant in. So I think a benefit of this challenge is that the confidence and ability to get up and speak in front of an audience like this is something that I never would have had beforehand until I took part in this competition. Being forced to get up and do a pitch in front of judges and an audience of other entrepreneurs really makes you think about, okay, how can I improve my public speaking? How can I improve this sort of where you speak out to an audience without them responding to you and have to feel like not too self-conscious to do it. You need to be able to put yourself here confident and stand here in a fashion like this where you can talk. And I think that's really important to learn as a student and something that's not taught specifically in the curriculum. And in addition to this, we got to talk to world leaders like astronaut Bob Cabana, who's the director of the Kennedy Space Center. He came out and spoke to us, which was a really eye-opening experience to talk to someone that's actually been up into space. And we got lectures from experts in their fields, be it smoke-free world or education, and that was something that their perspective on the way to solve problems and the way that they went about their business, I think, is a really exciting thing to be involved in as a student. And in relation to public speaking as well, we were, as Miss Mitchell mentioned, able to go and talk on radio 774 ABC and Channel 9 News and SBS News, which is something that I think as a student
it's now I can put this to my name, say I have been on the news, I have spoken on radio, which is something that is really important to be able to say you can do. It means that you're not too self-conscious about what you sound like or what you look like on TV to go out there and do this, and I think that's really important. And part of the challenge was teamwork, and we had to work together with Tori and Pavesh, and I think that's something that in schools there's a lot of teamwork and group projects, but to get together with two people that you know or friends with from your year level and develop a concept that you're passionate about and you actually want to take to reality, I think is a really important experience, as it's not forced upon you by the teachers as this is an assessment that we have to do. It's something you do out of your own will, and that really changes your perspective on the issue and how you go about solving it and how much you actually put in and how much of yourself you invest into the issue. And I think that's something really exciting. And of course, in addition to this, we got to go to NASA and have dinner under the Space Shuttle Atlantis and meet real-life astronauts, and our presentation flew up to space on a Blue Origin rocket, which is really cool and something that not a lot of us can say they've done. Now, of course, there were some challenges, and this is our machine, PadPay, which is an FPOS device with the incorporated biometric security device of a fingerprint scanner for the authorization of financial transactions. And this was a really difficult thing to come up with because you have to find a global problem that needs a solution, and then you have to come up with that solution yourself. It took us ages, weeks and weeks to come up with the actual problem before we could even go about writing the technical concept report and business plan, which brought about their own problems because they both had specific word limits and they had specific things that needed to be included, and we were constantly going, is this what the judges want? Is this what we need to include? Is this written right? Is it concise enough? So I think that was a really eye-opening experience in what you have to do in a business world as well, something that's not necessarily taught or hasn't been taught to me as part of the curriculum yet. I think it's developing more into the curriculum as the government wakes up to this is a way that students need to learn to be able to be put into their market and become entrepreneurs into the future. And along with the time commitment taking up writing the business plan and technical concept report, we also had year 11 and 12 work around us. So I was completing, or we all were completing, a 3-4 subject in year 11. So when we went up to Brisbane for the summit, the exams were not many weeks after. I think in Tori's case it was the day after we got back from Brisbane her 3-4 exam was. So it's finding time to study for these exams, study for SACs, also putting in the time outside to finish this challenge and come up with the idea, which I think teaches you important skills about time management, and you need to prioritise certain things over others. We were lucky enough to, as Ms Mitchell said, get a grant from the Australian Department of Industry, Innovation and Science, which covered our costs both to go to Brisbane and to the International Summit in the USA, which was really lucky because it meant that the stress of raising money and fundraising was taken off our hands because the government paid for it. But that's something that you really need to think about before entering into these challenges. You need to sort of think, is it something which we want to pay to go to the challenge, or do we want to fundraise? You really have to have this set out in your mind before you go about the challenge and know that it is something that you have to do if you get through to this stage. Now, some of the opportunities of this challenge were, I think the most significant part of going over to the US was we were exposed to over 400 different students from all around the world, be it Thailand, Japan, Nigeria, Australia, New Zealand, and it meant that we made a global network of friends and like-minded individuals who are passionate about entrepreneurship. It was an amazing feeling being inside a room with 400 other students that were all as passionate about the ideas that they had developed themselves as you were about your idea. And that's something that I don't think we get enough in a school environment. Not everyone's passionate about their idea and really enthusiastic and invested in a cause as much as this competition, all of the people at this competition summit were. And it meant that it sort of made you want to become an entrepreneur and think about the possibilities of maybe pursuing this as a career. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity and something I personally hadn't thought about doing beforehand. And we were lucky enough to get a scholarship to both Clarkson and Thomas Jefferson University in the United States as a result of becoming finalists of this challenge. Now, just to finish, I'd like to say a little bit about the founder of the Conrad Challenge, Nancy Conrad, had this saying that instead of inside the box thinking and outside the box thinking like we normally are taught to think about. She had no box thinking, was her statement, in which we need to mould our minds into a way in which there is no way that the solution to a problem is come up with. There is an infinite number of ways you can arrive at the correct solution. And I think that's really important to teach to students today and to learn and become relevant in the business world, is that there's not only one way to solve a problem, there's also another way. There's an infinite number of ways that you can get to that solution. And that's something that I think really sets you apart from others in the field, that your ability to approach a problem from different directions. And that's all I have to say tonight, but I'll be available for questions at the end. Thank you.
Did you want to say something? You can, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Tori and I was part of the team and I was primarily involved in creating the business plan. And throughout our Conrad experience, we faced continuous setbacks and challenges in every single stage of the competition. We had to find ways to communicate our idea and our concepts to others as efficiently and effectively as possible, and we had the continuous question come up, which just meant that we weren't able to efficiently work through what we were trying to say and communicate it to everyone, and we really had to work on doing that, and it was a real struggle for us. But in the end, we did find a way that expressed our idea as simplistically and succinctly as possible, but still was able to convey all the layers of complexity that our concept had. We also faced many personal challenges, such as having to organise all our time. As Mitchell mentioned, I was studying for my 3-4 biology exam on the flight up to the Brisbane round, during the lunch break of it and on the flight back, and my exam was the day after, which was unfortunate, but that's okay. We also had to accommodate for school, studying, sport, part-time jobs, and of course finding as much time as possible to work on our project to get it as good as it could possibly be, which was a real struggle considering we were doing part of Year 12. And one of the major challenges for me personally was public speaking, but through every challenge we faced, it was able to be flipped into a benefit. For example, I am able to talk in front of people and not totally freak out. We have also learned to converse with professionals in industries, which has given us experience to talk to people who may be a part of our future and may be people that we'll have to deal with in any profession we go into, whichever field it goes down. And one of the most beneficial moments for us was not only to go to NASA and present and meet 400 different students that were all like-minded, who had the same passion for their concept as we did, but was also what some of the judges and those within the industry who were experts had, because one judge asked if they could be a partner for us and with us, and another gave us a contact that would help us further our concept to get it from being just an idea and a concept to actually being put into reality and getting out there on the market. And for me personally, that was the biggest benefit of the entire competition, because it meant that regardless if we got the title of Conrad Scholar or not, we actually had done something successful with our idea, and it was a real point of pride for us, and me particularly. And I really loved that, and it was one of the major benefits from the whole competition. And from this opportunity, we have had so many opportunities come for us. We get to talk in public events. We've been on the news, had experience with media, and now we know how to present ourselves in a way that most others won't, which does set us apart from others, which is helpful for our future. And we're also given a chance to not only represent our team and our school, but also our country on an international platform, which was pretty amazing. And we also got to collaborate and discuss our ideas with other like-minded students and make connections with people who we are still close to and have the same passion and support us every step of the way. So we have a real worldwide and global support system for us, which is incredible. And ultimately, we now have another door that's open for us to follow in our careers and our futures and have experience that can be added to our CV, sets us apart, and is real something that will stay with us forever. And thank you.
I just, before Alan gets up, I want to say 3 years ago, and he's probably thinking, why did I not mention him before? He is our school principal, and 3 years ago we rewrote our strategy at our school, and entrepreneurship became a large part of that strategy. And he supports what I do in every way within the school, and I think that's also a really important thing for teachers to take away. When management supports you, you can get so much more done, and particularly when it's actually written into your long-term strategy at the school. So Alan's just going to say a few words.
Thank you, Michelle. I will be very brief because I want to hear what Darren's got to say. It's often dangerous to give a principal a microphone and an audience, and then you watch out. But I will draw your attention to a LinkedIn article that's published on my profile, which is called School Values and Entrepreneurial Skills. And to be honest, that is one of the keys. If you have a school or you work in a school that is totally risk averse, it is very difficult to get something like this off the ground. And so one of my jobs is to set a culture that allows things to happen and sometimes fail, and to that to be okay. And so that notion of that the culture will eat strategy or structure for breakfast is attributed to Peter Drucker. It's doubtful he ever said that, actually, but it's a tribute, and it is so true. And it takes quite a long time to move the culture of a school. So if you're interested in STEM entrepreneurial stuff, be patient. Yes, you need some support, and I think Michelle's made a pretty good pitch to her principal about some storage and space. I take that on board. I'm not sure we needed a public forum to have that discussion, but still. But that notion of setting the tone and culture that allows for the values that Fiona espoused, the resilience, adaptability, focus, and also to have a tolerance for risk. If you always know the right answer in a school, then you're not going to get much of this stuff happening. So I'm going to stop there. Look up my LinkedIn profile if you're interested in the article, but it then discusses this topic at more length. That's my job. Set tone, set culture, set expectations. Because then things like this can happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan, Michelle, Bhavesh, Mitchell and Victoria. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing your story with us. Thank you.
And they're my top 5 things, which is just a repeat of what I've said.
Thanks, Michelle. Because we've had such fantastic speakers, what we are thinking of doing is bumping question time, because we would still like to hear from Darren. So keep any questions you have, and in the feedback survey, we welcome you to put the questions in. We'll pose them to the speakers. Feel free to chat with them afterwards, and that way we will be able to hear from Darren as well. So I'd like to introduce Darren Irvin, who is a learning specialist in entrepreneurship at Templestowe College. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you. All right, I know it's late and I've got the last shift, so I'm going to speak really fast to keep you on your toes, but before I do, could I just get a show of hands? Who is a high school teacher, secondary school teacher, hands up? Okay, hands down. Primary school teacher, hands up. Hands down. University person of some kind? Yes, okay. Industry, anyone from industry? Okay, great. And who's just here for the free food? Anybody? Was there any free food? I don't know. Great, because that's why I'm here. All right, so this was a one-day conference. Some of what I'm going to talk about was a one-day conference at the end of last year. I was going to jam it down into 20 minutes. Now I'm going to try for about 13. Okay, so, but we can remove the school tour as part of it, so we should be all right, and you don't need to know who I am. Main point, and I think we're already sold on this idea, as a society, as a country, we need more entrepreneurs. We would all agree with that. I'm going to skip over the statistics because some of this bags out universities just a little bit, and we're at a university, so it's probably not fair. But here's just some stats for you. You can take photos, or these slides are maybe available later. But really, if we look at the why, and I think when we talk about STEM, or we talk about project-based learning, or we talk about entrepreneurship, some of the buzzwords starting to emerge in education, really, it's got to come back to the question of why. Why are we actually wanting to teach this stuff? Why are we wanting to develop 21st century skills, really, to me, it comes down to some of these statistics, some which we already saw in the first presentation. But to me, this is a little bit damning. Now, Monash is doing pretty well. You guys are ranked number 4 and 79% completion rate within 6 years when people go to university here. But on average, 33% of people don't complete the university degrees that they enrol in. And there's some other pathways and how they end up. So I think we could be doing, here's some more stats, but don't worry about them, you can get them later. I think that we can do more to prepare young people for the world that they're living in now. That's all I'm trying to say in that, and I think we can set them up to make better decisions, have better life direction, and do better, not just accrue large HECS debts. So, what is an entrepreneur? In my mind, this is my sort of synthesised definition. An entrepreneur is someone that acts upon opportunities and ideas and transforms them into value for others. And that value isn't always economic value. It can be financial, cultural, social, academic, however you would like to put it, environmental, okay? And really when we're talking about educating young people, I think it's important that we have that full definition, and part of the problem is entrepreneurship. People think business, or they think social entrepreneurship. But really, what we're talking about is teaching people to solve problems, teaching people to take risks. These are some of the, I guess, activities of an entrepreneur. If we had Q&A time, we were starting a conversation before we started, may have been part of the reason we're running late, around what are employability skills, maybe enterprising skills, maybe the general capabilities. There's a whole bunch of different umbrella terms to talk about why we're doing these types of education in schools. It's because it actually comes back to the old Melbourne Declaration. We want people to be confident and creative individuals, active and informed citizens, and lifelong learners. And these are the skills or qualities that don't necessarily present themselves in the traditional curriculum, but are needed to be all of those three things. The problem with them is, though, they're very difficult to measure and assess in all our traditional ways of measuring things. It's a whole other session really, but I would say, why do we even want to measure them that way? Because these aren't just skills, they are actually a collection of skills, dispositions, character traits, and they're kind of an interconnected group of those things. So we have to look at how we assess them differently, but we also have to look at how we teach them in a different way. And that's, to me, what entrepreneurial learning is all about. So I'll probably say something about that. Here's our objective at Templestowe College: to develop the entrepreneurial mindset and the skills associated through authentic learning experiences. When I say authentic learning experiences, I mean actually producing something in our learning that's beyond just a worksheet, and the audience is not just the teacher. The audience has to be an authentic audience. It has to be people beyond the classroom, and that's what authentic learning is all about. So our entrepreneurship program, it's got 4 main aspects. The first is school-owned but student-run businesses. The second is our seed funding program. The third is our entrepreneurship elective, and the fourth is trying to embed authentic learning across the curriculum. How much time we'll have to talk about any of that, no idea. So I'm just going to race through some things. These will just be snapshots for you. If you're looking for some ideas to take away, great. If you're all STEM people, I really want to dedicate, at least 60 seconds to stay on one slide to talk about our plastic recycling project. So I'm just going to race through most of these. So TC Market is our entry-level entrepreneurial experience where students can get together at a lunchtime, sell anything they want to other students in the school. So we've had everything from seafood, which was a little bit scary, to slime, to homemade jewellery, recycled clothing, sausage sizzle fundraisers, lots of things like that. Busking, it all happens at TC Market. Students can then graduate to be part of the Templestowe Community Market, which was an entrepreneurship elective project. So not only creating a profit-making venture for themselves in that class, but opening the door for other students. So we had students who worked in our permaculture sustainability garden selling plants they'd propagated and selling compost. We had people from our textiles class selling things they'd made. Someone who just, one of their passions was wire jewellery, who set up shop as well. That's Templestowe Community Market. So the good thing about Templestowe Community Market was that students were able to take what they'd learned in our controlled environment, controlled and supported environment in school, like a microeconomy, to borrow a Montessori term, and then connect it to the world. So they get to engage with their local community. They're alongside, businesses that are functioning broader than our school. So they're learning a lot in that process. Our coffee cart, this began as a student initiative, part of, creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem in the school. It's both philosophical but also structural. We have a policy that yes is the default. Any student, parent or staff member that has an idea, the answer has to be yes, unless it takes too much time, costs too much money or negatively impacts on somebody else. And a student presented this idea using that model for their pitch. They wanted to get a coffee cart happening at the school. Will it take too much time? No, it's all right. I got this. I'll organise it. I'll source it. Will it cost too much money? Well, we're going to need $12,000. But we are going to rent the cart out to students at $20 a day, 200 school days a year. That's going to be paid back in 3 years. And so they had that, and all the positive impacts of the project, they were able to convince the principal team that it was going to create a sense of community where staff and students could get together over a cuppa, chat about the feedback from their work, and it was going to be all hunky-dory. And they were approved. They only spent $6,000, so it was paid off in term 2 of year 2, by the end of term 1, year 2. And the coffee cart's gone out to do local events, primary school fetes, the Templestowe Community Market. It now runs, it did run as a 5-day franchised system where each day was managed by a different student who rostered their own staff. They also trained staff. They did all the financial reporting, so they had a profit and loss sheet that they had to fill out, order their stock. It was all part of their management responsibilities, and so was innovation and increasing their business. We've actually moved that, and this comes back to one of the things Michelle said. We have changed it now to just come under the umbrella of our employability skills program now. So because I was doing about 20 yard duties a week before school recess and lunchtime, both sessions, I couldn't do that forever. So we've moved it to being part of our canteen for a season while we've got some renovations going on. But it means that students are getting constant training and feedback on what they're doing. Just one thing on the employability skills program. There is a provision in the Child Employment Act that says any activity undertaken as part of a school project where the net benefit goes to the school does not constitute employment. That's the legislation that we've driven our whole employability skills program through, as well as a lot of our entrepreneurial work. So if students touch any school finances, well then it goes all through the school. We treat it like our canteen, and there's a whole thing about input taxed or not when it comes to GST. Then we pay our students if it's work they've done where they've earned the money, just like in our employability skills program, which is also another session in itself. Can't talk about it because we've got to keep moving. You're going to give me the wrap up, aren't you? Yeah, great, thank you. TC Laser. So this is where it starts to get a bit STEMy, okay? So I don't know, maybe it all is, but we have an $80,000 laser cutter, so we've decided to purchase commercial quality equipment in our school so that students can have proper real world experiences, not just hobby experiences. But there's method in our madness, and it's driven from this idea that not everything in education has to cost money. And we're so used to just running expenses in education. 2 minutes, easy, that'll be easy. Not everything has to cost money. So why can't we do some cost recovery in our teaching and learning? Why can't we do things that actually create economic value? So this name badge here was created by students. We used to pay $8 for them as a school. Now students make them for about $1.50 and they charge the school $6. So everyone's a winner. Them a little bit more than us. We also did some work for Monash, actually. We did them if anyone's worn one of them. And graphic designers, property developers. We have a commercial kitchen where students can do food studies, then they go through, they can specialise in something as part of our catering program, then go launch their own food business. We had someone do that. They register their own kitchen at home. Now this is our latest toy. It's a signage printer. It can print 1.3 metres wide by 50 metres long. Mainly it was because students have two ideas that are the most common, and one is around food and the other is around having their own clothing label. So we thought, why don't we do something where we can get some better cost recovery and do signs and banners at the same time. And then we've got students who do printing and creating their own clothing. That one there that's in the heat press, he's doing amazing work. He's got NBL basketballers promoting his stuff on Instagram and sort of building his following that way. This is the one, again, that's a bit more STEM-like. So if you've heard of precious plastics, people at Monash probably have, because master's students at Monash have created this. So have our Year 11 students, but you guys are doing okay as well. So basically this started with an inquiry question, and it was, is plastic in the ocean really a problem? And students went away and they had a look and they realised, oh, actually, yeah, a bit of a problem. We should do something about it. So they thought we could collect plastic and we could recycle it. Then someone said, what if we recycled our own plastic? And so then we said, great, let's build our own recycling plant. So Year 11 systems engineering students built that. That's an example of one of the products that it produces. So we have also a CNC milling machine. So students can use Fusion 360, design a 3D model, or they can use our 3D scanner and scan something that they already want to make, create the moulds, injection mould using fully recycled plastic. What I love about it is that it is interdisciplinary. So we've got co-curricular programs, our environmental action group involved in the collection. We've got systems engineering students, we've got entrepreneurship students, science is doing plastic next term in Year 8. So all of these different groups, somehow, we're going to make it work together. Don't know how, but we are going to make it work together. And then what's great about this project, if you want to take on something like this, is it's really measurable. We can actually weigh the plastic. We can work out how much carbon we're actually preventing from entering the atmosphere. So this is one I'm really excited about. It's kind of been in the works for the last 6 months to a year, and now we're kind of ready to bring it together and start making products. That was a really bad key tag that we made as a sample. Yeah, I'm out of time, sorry. There's more to talk about. TC seed funding is interesting, authentic learning across the classroom. There's a little bit about entrepreneurship in the curriculum, but don't worry about that. Don't worry about the curriculum. Let's just do some good stuff. Anyway, here's my takeaways. What gets measured gets done. That comes back to the whole thing that we were talking about before with the 4 Cs, or the capabilities. Really, as Michelle said, I think some of the problems are, you know, we were running this great thing. Kids were making wood-fired pizzas. Others were busking. Others were selling cordial. It was an amazing thing. And then we're like, oh, lunchtime's over. We have to go learn now. And I think that's a real problem with the way we structure our schools. We actually have to look at how we're measuring this activity so that we make room for it, because this is always a little bit of a sideshow on, you know, off to the side. If we actually build in place in our teaching and learning structures how we're going to measure it, and I've got some ideas, but again, it's another session, it's an exciting one, then it's going to actually get its own momentum. This was already mentioned as well, this learning costs time and money, it needs investment, but it's not money that can't be recovered. My other tip, if you're a school leader or if you have a passion, is let it be guided by not just student passions. We're big on student passion at TC, but it's got to be where student passion and staff passion meet. That's how communities are formed. That's how teams are formed around a shared vision. And you can say, well, it's teachers' job, they've got to do it. But the reality is, if they're not passionate about it, they're not going to be doing it, and not doing it very well, and not giving up their lunchtime. So finding that passion meeting place is great. And then you need a champion, you need a pioneer, you need someone who's going to lead it. Start small, let it grow, and see what sticks. Failure, fail fast, fail forward. If it doesn't work, probably won't make the slide deck, okay? All right, thanks very much. Sorry I had to rush.
Thank you very much to all our speakers. We understand that we're running close to time, and so we don't want to take up any more of your time, but we really appreciate you coming, and we do really want to hear your questions. So I'm leaving these slides up here so that when the video becomes available, that the presenters' top fives will be here. But we do invite you to keep your questions and put them in the survey. We've put a specific spot in there for you to put your questions, and we will see if we can get the speakers or whatnot to respond to your questions. Just a couple of things before we go. There is a couple of opportunities. We're looking for expertise. We're looking for teachers with expertise in STEM to be involved in a research project. So I urge you to contact Amanda Berry here at Monash if you would like to be involved in that research. It will take approximately 1 hour interview at your school. So if you're at all interested, please contact amanda.berry@monash.edu. The second thing is we have a fantastic new short course available about making engineering explicit in STEM education, and so we welcome you to register for that. It's a fantastic event coming up on the 5th of September. It will be all day, and it's a cross-faculty event run with the Faculty of Education staff and with staff from the Faculty of Engineering. So if you're interested in that as well, please jump on and have a look at short courses where you'll be able to find some more information about that. Otherwise, I would very much like to thank our speakers for this evening, and thank you all. Thank you to the live streamers for joining us as well. Thank you for coming in, and we look forward to getting your questions, and we will post them back to you as quickly as possible. And we look forward to seeing you at the next event in November. We have a few events between now and then, but the next STEMinar itself is in November. So have a look at our website for the next event. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and thank you to the speakers.